What if the most exciting breakthroughs in retail media are happening far from the spotlight of the industry's biggest players? Right now, a new generation of challenger retail media networks is quietly rewriting the rules. These second and third tier RMNs are building powerful flywheels, capturing the imagination of brands and connecting with shoppers in ways that even the giants are starting to notice. I've seen a lot of different statistics on the total number of RMNs in existence today, but according to Insider Intelligence, there are now over 200 retail media networks in operations. Digiday reports that the vast majority, estimated at 180 to 190 or more, are considered second and third tier RMNs. With the growth of new RMNs, retail media ad spend has continued to increase substantially year over year, and the field has never been more open for bold networks ready to innovate. Advertising Week reports that close to 80% of all consumer spending still takes place within the physical stores, underscoring how the battleground for shopper attention has shifted to in-store, content, and video. The challengers are not just keeping up, they're setting the new standards for what retail media can accomplish. Today, we're diving deep into what it takes to build a high-velocity retail media flywheel, why content is the key differentiation, and how challenger RMNs could seize this momentum to leap ahead. If you want to understand where retail media is headed and how the underdogs can win, you're in the right place. Let's get started with one of the industry's most respected voices, Andrew Lipsman. Welcome to Tap Into an Expert. I'm your host, Eric Sheinkop. Today, we're exploring the evolving landscape of retail media with somebody who has played a pivotal role in shaping industry perspectives, Andrew Lipsman. Andrew is widely recognized for his expertise in digital advertising and retail media. His research and insights have informed strategies at leading conferences and executive boardrooms alike. He is also the author behind the highly regarded Media, Ads, and Commerce Substack, where he distills the most important trends for brands, retailers, and media professionals. If you haven't already checked it out, I highly recommend visiting mediaadsandcommerce.substack.com and subscribing for thoughtful analysis on the topics that matter most. We've also linked to it in the show notes. What sets Andrew apart is his ability to break down complex developments, from the rapid growth of in-store audiences to the increasing importance of content and video in retail. He consistently offers a clear perspective on where the industry is headed and what leaders should be paying attention to next. Andrew, thank you so much for being here today. Before we dive into topics like Challenger RMN and the evolving content, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, anything I missed, share with our listeners about your journey and how you ended up here.
First off, thank you so much for having me, Eric. It's really exciting to be here. I'm Andrew Lipsman. I'm an independent consultant and analyst covering mostly the retail media space. How did I get here? I guess I've spent most of my career covering all things digital media, advertising, and commerce. Going back 20 years or so, I was early in following e-commerce measurement. I worked at Comscore, where we were doing digital media measurement and digital ads research, and all of these things converge in different ways. 5 or 6 years ago, I went to eMarketer to be a principal analyst covering retail and e-commerce. And early on in my tenure, I knew I was going to be covering a lot of Amazon. And I noticed, actually, one of my fellow analysts wrote a report. It was about digital advertising. And the subhead to the report was, Amazon becomes the number 3 ad seller in the US. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. I knew Amazon had an advertising business. I hadn't really given so much thought to it, but I had to pause and think about it because I was like, wait a second, this business is already billions of dollars. What is going on here? This was 2018, by the way. In that moment, I just stopped for a moment and thought about it. And I said, well, advertising on site where people are already there to shop and buy, it's the Google advertising machine, but it's on steroids because it's close to the point of purchase. Like, if you understand why Google was so powerful, then it's just taking that to the next level. So not only did I realize that Amazon had a gold mine on their hands, but that any other retailer that had any semblance of traffic would be able to do the same. And also that they would be able to extend the value of that because of the really valuable shopping and purchase data into other advertising environments. So I wrote my first report on retail media in 2019. And at that point, I said, I see this space shaping up into 3 primary channels: on-site, off-site, where you'd be targeting other environments like social ads, programmatic ads, and streaming TV, and then in-store. And here we are, 5, 6 years later, and things are kind of shaping up along those lines. Now, what's interesting is all of these trends manifest on their own timelines. So there's a trend like in-store, which is still just barely getting off the ground, but I think is going to be a really profound component of retail media over time.
Yeah. And there's enough to keep you busy and engaged considering how quickly that things are moving. What keeps you passionate about this space in particular as the industry continues to evolve and grow? Is there something about retail media that is a reason why you like to focus your attention and efforts on this?
Yeah, I think the reason that retail media resonated with me so strongly early on was because of marketing effectiveness. I grew up in the school of learning about marketing effectiveness. It's a discipline that is in shorter and shorter supply these days. It really was, central to the media industry in the days of linear TV. And it's kind of atrophied in the last decade as we've started to put our performance advertising blinders on. But that's always resonated with me is like, I like advertising when it's effective. And I think about the dimensions that make it effective. It's usually media quality and then the ability to actually influence purchase. So retail media to me is almost the perfect context for advertising to be effective. And then, as you know, I spend a lot of my time doing research and digging into the details and studying this. And what you find is in various contexts, retail media is effective. It's effective for different reasons in different ways. And there's always new data to unearth and new layers to understand.
And I think what's really exciting now is the evolution of all of the smaller players, the second tier, the third tier, the challenger. I want to dive into that and the opportunity and also the challenges that they face. In traditional marketing, when we talk about challenger brands, the most classic case is like Pepsi versus Coca-Cola. And a lot of times the challenger brand, they're able to be more nimble and scrappy and fast and a little bit more edgy. How does that come to play when it comes to retail media, especially because it was easier for an Amazon, a Walmart, a Target, the big players to get into it because they've been collecting data for so long. And it was just something that they could turn on and say, yep, we could absolutely get a message to the right person at the right time. We know when they're ready for a new product. But what defines a challenger in retail media and specifically a successful challenger in today's RMN landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could almost define it as any RMN not named Amazon or Walmart. Maybe you could extend it to a few beyond that, but it's become a pretty prevalent talking point that Amazon plus Walmart is about 85% of the retail media market. And it's kind of been used to, I would say, signal that maybe retail media is not all it's cracked up to be. And it's, just a two-player game. I totally disagree with that. I think there's still strong prospects for both Amazon and Walmart. And also the rest of them, the second and third tier RMNs are just getting started. They are just scratching the surface of their potential. Walmart and Amazon are more mature. They've already captured a lot of the lower hanging fruit that this next tier hasn't done yet. They've in many cases barely tapped on-site ad monetization. Some are further along in different off-site advertising efforts. And almost nobody's really monetized in-store media in a significant way. And there's a ton of potential in the physical store. And by the way, Amazon can't compete with that today. Yeah, they have Whole Foods, but it's just not going to be the same as a great specialty retailer turning on interesting content experiences in the store. So I think it's an exciting moment. Even if the rest of the market only maintains 15% market share, it's going to be 15% of an increasingly large number. But I do see a lot of reason to believe that they will start to extend that market share in significant ways as well over the coming years.
Yeah, so the advantages that these challengers have, second and third tier RMNs, is it just that they are able for the first time to start monetizing something new and that adds to their balance sheet and makes the entire company more valuable? Or what's the most overlooked advantage that these challenger RMNs have as this industry evolves?
Well, I guess it starts with the second mover advantage, right? Amazon and Walmart have kind of defined the contours of the industry. So they don't have to do the heavy lifting. They can kind of adapt to the standards that have been set and then build on top of that. I think one of the keys for second and third tier RMNs is that there is something unique about all of them. They're in a unique category. The category has purchase patterns that look a certain way. Because it looks a certain way, maybe it requires different sets of KPIs or metrics. So I think that they need to both standardize in a way that makes it easy for an average brand to make a buy within that retail media network, but also flex your own muscle and show what makes you truly valuable, what you can lean into and provide a very compelling package to brands. So one of the transitions that has to happen here is that these retailers have to become B2B marketers. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is they don't have that impulse. A lot of times, if you read the press releases coming from RMNs, they will talk about putting the focus on the customer and all these things that to me, that's B2C marketing, right? And I get that that's what they've done for their entire existence, but you got to talk to brands now. You can do it in a way that is good for the customer, but you got to speak the language of brands. You got to speak the language of media. So there is really an interesting dynamic and opportunity to start to market yourselves differently and differentiate in this environment. Because, the other thing is brands can't spread their money around too many retail media networks. So it's always said, how many RMNs can really become, a walled garden? I think there's actually more than people think. Like, I don't have a hard time getting up to 20 or so, just within the US. But still, as you mentioned, there's hundreds out there. So not all of them are going to be able to attain some level of walled garden status. So they're going to have to modify their playbook a bit.
Yeah. And there certainly are the retailers who have been looking at this and saying, we do have to speak differently to our customer than we've ever done it before. And you look at hires like Best Buy with Elisa Valentino, who's coming from a totally different industry and have approached things their entire career from a very different perspective, and bringing that into the retail ecosystem is obviously an important evolution here. But you also talked about putting together brand packages to sell to brands and in store. So let's talk about that retail media flywheel. Can you walk us through the retail media flywheel, explain how content, it sits at the center, both for the leading and the challenger RMN. So first of all, what is the retail media flywheel? And how does that flywheel work? Why is content also critical to its momentum?
Sure. So I think most folks in retail are familiar with Amazon's flywheel. And the basic premise there was Amazon, by solving on the dimensions of price, selection, and convenience, it improved customer experience, that brought more traffic, that basically kept fueling its ongoing growth. So Amazon successfully executed on that first flywheel to kind of own the pillar of commerce. But then I realized that they were ascending into their next flywheel, which was a new flywheel built around that commerce pillar, but also advertising and media. So media, ads, and commerce, those are the three components of the retail media flywheel. It's where the name of my Substack comes from. At this point, every retailer, they've got the commerce piece, right? It's in most cases, it's going to be both online and offline commerce. They've layered in some version of an ad business, some more advanced than others. But the media piece is a really critical piece that most retailers have not solved for yet. Now, Amazon is the best example because they have a lot of media assets, but they've got a crown jewel in Prime Video that has ads layered in, right? But they also have Amazon Music. They've got Alexa, all these other bits and pieces of media that add to the ability to reach wider audiences. Walmart acquired Vizio, modeling Amazon's strategy in a way. But then after those two, who has media assets? And it's pretty slim from there, but it's a big opportunity. Many retail media networks are partnering to get access to more audiences from media assets, whether that's plugging into social sites. Best Buy, as you mentioned, they actually have probably the most interesting new model that I would say applies broadly to these second and third tier RMNs, which is to partner with a digital publisher. So Best Buy and CNET have partnered. And it's this perfect audience overlap and people who are going to be high intent, or maybe they're technology enthusiasts, your perfect ideal Best Buy customer, and the ability to integrate those pieces in a way that drives each other's businesses. I think there's a lot of partnerships like that can happen. Maybe we'll actually see our first M&A where a retailer could maybe buy a media publisher, many of which are distressed assets at this point. But the content is the big piece of it. Content is what these media companies are good at. And content is what influences people. That's what makes advertising effective. And so, the hard work of marketing is often the middle of the funnel, right? It's one thing to make people aware, and then it's hard to get them to convert. The middle of the funnel is the heavy lifting. And that's what publishers, that's what content really does a very good job of. So the more that retail media networks can hold close quality content, the more likely they are to be able to generate the types of activity and purchases that they want to.
Yeah. And we've heard so much about content. Every retailer, you need video, you need content, but what you just said is they hold close to high quality content. Do you see a shift? Because we went through a journey with content where it became like no one wanted polished content anymore. And it was all cell phone influencer, like that type of thing is what brands thought were moving the needle. And it certainly still plays a role. Are you seeing a shift to high quality content being prioritized, especially like as, becoming the new digital shelf or whatever it might be?
We're starting to see it pick up, but not as quick as I would like it to. In part because retailers haven't always thought in these terms, in terms of the media lens and the impact of content. So it's not necessarily a native language, but I think that they understand, just in simplest terms, rich media is an important driver of interest and conversion on their site. So you have seen the evolution just from static sponsored product type of ads to more sponsored brand and sponsored brand video. I think that those are still some of the most under leveraged assets. I've worked with folks who have done great research on the impact of those. And what's interesting is those are generally higher cost advertising units, which tends to steer brands away from it. Like they're always looking for cost efficiency. But here's the thing. They actually drive incremental sales much better than other forms of media. Like sometimes they're pricier for a reason, right? Like quality drives outcomes.
Yeah.
And so I think right now we don't have a strong enough bias towards quality because that is what's going to produce the best outcomes. The industry's starting to learn a little bit more about it, but I'd like to see the action pick up more quickly.
You and me both. You talked about Amazon and Prime and Walmart buying Vizio, and even Best Buy has a partnership with Roku, not exclusive though. Are there any examples of challenger RMNs who are using video or rich content to accelerate their flywheel?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, we've seen just a rash of partnership announcements over the last 2-3 years where it's been one after another. I'd say the 5 or 6 biggest RMNs primarily, let's say Best Buy, Instacart, Amazon, Walmart, Kroger, a few others are the ones who have been doing this. And they've kind of gone down the list with whether it's Roku, NBC, Universal, Disney, etc. So you can almost mix and match all of them. And it's just about getting access to that high quality ad supported inventory that's out there on CTV. Now, the first thing that has to happen is you connect the pipes, and then you also need to align sales teams. We don't talk about this enough, but not every one of these partnerships really gets off the ground because you need alignment with those sales teams. But the ones that start to get some momentum and scale, you will see over time that brands start investing more and more in this opportunity. But we're still pretty early in this trajectory. I mean, it's one of the areas that eMarketer projects to be, one of the fastest growing segments of retail media in the next couple of years, but it's still pretty early.
Yeah. And, as you mentioned, content, it's no longer just the product images, static banners. Like shoppers expect more now, and they're more responsive to richer, more immersive experiences, whether that's on site or in store. Although to your point, in store is just at the very, very beginning. And we see Albertsons setting up television screens in store and all these other retailers and grocery TV and things of that nature. But let's explore the formats, strategies that are going to help these challenger RMNs stand out and win in this new area. So what types of content? So, is it shoppable video? Is it live stream? Is it in-store digital, in-app experiences? Do you think are the most effective for challenger RMNs?
I'd start with the basics, which is where are people conducting most of their transactions? It's on site, and that's increasingly within the app. So within those browsing experiences, I think making sure that you have that above the fold content when you know somebody's demonstrated some intent to be able to introduce that brand. And every category is going to be different, right? If it's consumer electronics, sometimes it's about getting into the technicalities and how to use something or even just how to get it set up. In lifestyle categories like fashion or cosmetics, it's going to look different. It's going to be about maybe how you apply something or how you wear it, but then how it looks. So I'd start with the basics there. Then, live streams, shoppable video. For live streams, it's one of those things that the live part of it, for whatever reason, has not mattered that much in the US like it has in Asian markets. So I guess you could do a live stream if you get some audience for it, great. But, you can then package that and redistribute the video, because if you do get people to engage, it can be effective. I like the idea of shoppable video when it is close to the point of purchase. the idea of shoppable TV is one of those things that, we all want to see it happen. It would be really cool, but it's like kind of not how viewers behave. It's a lean back medium. The most that I could see happening is you advertise, let's say, a consumer packaged goods brand, and it's very low consideration. And through voice activation, you could say, Amazon, add this product to my cart. I think that's the closest. People are not going to see an item of clothing and like immediately go to purchase. They're going to look it up on their phone. They're going to start their shopping journey. They're not just going to convert through the TV.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love about what you just mentioned is everybody talks again about video and content, but that's like saying, well, your brand needs advertising, or through RMN, we could offer advertising. It's like, okay, cool. What type? Like, is it awareness? Are you leaning back and watching TV? Are you leaning in because you've already seen an ad for something and you're interested in learning more about that? And that's the places where different types of content, different video really plays a role to get that incremental sale. But, one of the biggest challenges for the smaller RMNs is they're fighting for the exact same budget as the big guys in many instances. So they need to have something actually unique, a unique value proposition that they could bring to the brand and say, here's why you should spend money within our ecosystem as well. So how can the RMNs use video, interactive content to create a unique value proposition for brands, considering that many of the brands are sold at multiple retailers?
Yeah, so you're right. There has to be a unique value proposition. So this is where specialty retailers can lean into what makes them unique when they're competing against a multi-category retailer like Amazon or Walmart. And, I hate to be cynical about it, but a lot of ad investment decisions just get made in spreadsheets. People are looking at a ROAS number across all the different potential channels, and they pick the ones that look the best. And so I think it's really incumbent upon the ones that have to fight a little bit harder to prove their value. They're not going to win on scale. We're not going to win on scale against Amazon or Walmart. They have to win on effectiveness. So this is, again, content to me is the path to effectiveness. You can, as a second tier RMN, prove that you're driving higher incremental ROAS, or that you're reaching a more select audience that's more important to that specific advertiser. And I think they just need ways to show it. So that's the role that, for me, content should play into this, is that you got to try a little bit harder. At the end of the day, though, the results are what's going to drive that investment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're early with in-store video, but what role do you think that in-store video and that digital content can play together in connecting that online and offline flywheel?
Yeah, so I'm really, really optimistic about the future of in-store video. It starts with the screens that are starting to roll out into stores. I am the first one to say, be careful when you introduce advertising to a physical store environment. Don't do what you've always done, which is put crappy ads into these environments, or don't just be fully promotional and always be, running discounts. Like, try to have really high quality creative that people like, elevate the customer experience. I think that quality is really essential there. I also think there's an opportunity to have impactful media with creator content, right? And this can be everything from your average social media creator to celebrity. But bringing them into the store environment, I think, captures attention and can add to the brand. And then the next layer of it, and something that I've seen some pretty interesting technologies for, is three-dimensional, like holographic displays.
Yeah.
You're not going to have those on every end cap, but I think you could have, one or two at certain places in the store to really add to the drama and the physical retail as theater. So that's the future of in-store and how content plays a role. Now, the key here and how it connects the dots between all the different channels is that same type of content should be able to be threaded throughout. Like, I love the idea of having a single creator helping articulate the value of a brand and being able to see that when you go on site and start shopping, seeing that reinforced through offsite ads, and then also seeing it in store. I think that's where marketing gets to be really effective.
And you mentioned some really cool technologies like hologram and things of that nature. And the funny thing is, like, a lot of that they were testing years ago. Like, I remember over 10 years ago, there was an app that you could put over a particular ice cream and it would come to life and it would talk to you and all these cool things. But you also mentioned one of the reasons why I think that that's been so hard to get adoption is because they're just looking at it in a spreadsheet. And if you can't measure it, they can't claim that it's a good investment. So how do RMNs measure the impact of video rich content, that interactive experience that you're talking about on shopper behavior? And what they're looking for is that advertiser ROI.
So that's one of the big challenges right now for in-store is that it's not as measurable as online, right? You can track every interaction online and you need analytics and metrics to be able to measure, for example, how many people walk past that screen where you might see that in-store content. And then how do you close the loop between that and more product sales? There are some really interesting innovations that are happening in the industry that I think for the first time do promise to solve this challenge, but it's not solved by any stretch today. Now, in the absence of that, there are different types of match store tests and things that can prove that when you run media in certain stores versus a controlled group where you don't run the media, that it does drive sales lift.
Yeah, that is absolutely one of the biggest challenges is the expectation from the consumer who now expects these videos, omnichannel experiences, but you can't really measure it and you don't know where the ROI is. So building that content driven flywheel certainly has its challenges. So let's talk about the hurdles that challenger RMNs face, how they could overcome it to deliver at scale. So what do you think the biggest barriers are, particularly for the challenger RMNs to scaling video and rich content?
It's by nature a more bespoke effort. It requires creativity. They don't always have the in-house resources to be able to do that. And, what I'm hearing a lot of is using the magic AI wand to solve every problem. I like to differentiate. AI is very all-encompassing, right? There are certain things that it does very, very well and can help with automation quite a bit. And there are other things that I'm just a skeptic in thinking that it's ever going to be able to do what human creativity can do. There is kind of an uncanny valley effect where, I don't know, AI generated content that's not real people tends to look like Franken content. And this idea that you should do every single possible iteration of Franken content, I just don't think it's going to be quality. So my view is use humans to create great quality first, right? When you have that quality content that resonates, now you want to scale it. And you have all these different channels that you want to scale it to. That's a great use case for AI because it can do that. It can take that same content and reformat it. And, maybe you need to add some motion to it in certain contexts. Like those are the things that it should be able to easily solve for and scale.
Yeah, you sound like our company. I give a talk called Start with Human. Like you can't start with AI because it can't tell the truth, right? It doesn't have real life experiences. So start with human and then use AI to scale.
It's a tool. I say it like, I don't want it to create creative or artistic things, but it can iterate things. It can optimize things. Those are tools to me.
It's so funny that, my favorite quote is like, I wanted AI to do the dishes and laundry so I could spend time writing and doing art. Not do my art and writing so I have more time to do laundry and dishes. Like, but it's here and now. But I think that it's a challenge for RMNs because there's always something new. And obviously AI is not going away. It's the hottest topic, but we've seen this over just the past couple of years. I mean, if you remember 2 years ago at Shop Talk, everything was about the metaverse. And every retailer felt like, God, if I'm not throwing a party in the metaverse to try my product with an avatar, like I'm behind. And I haven't heard one thing about the metaverse recently. And then this and then that. So what advice do you have for RMN struggling to keep up with the pace with the current innovation? And then what comes with it is the shopper expectations.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First, question the premise. There's always going to be a new trend. Some of them are real, some of them are not. Is there real money behind it? Like retail media is real because it's already a $50 billion industry. Yeah. Social commerce is real because it's already an $80 billion segment of e-commerce. Metaverse wasn't anything consequential, but the thing people never really do is they get seduced by all this talk of the edge cases of how things are going to be used, and they don't think about the day-to-day use case and whether it exists. The metaverse was being sold to us that we were going to be putting on headsets to have meetings at work. Like, it's insane to think about, but it should have been insane, at face value when it was being talked about seriously 2 years ago. To me, like, AI, we're in a moment where you just question the premise. Just put a skeptical hat and ask, like, why might this not happen? Right? Everybody's jumping ahead to AI agents doing our shopping for us. Okay. I believe AI is going to change how we search because I see it happening with my own behavior and a lot of people too. So I'm not going to say that it's not going to have an impact, but The idea that I'm going to be able to set off an AI agent to go do shopping for me and that I'm going to get a good result is crazy.
Yeah.
When I do my own shopping, I have to return things 30% of the time. That those 30% return rates destroy the economics of e-commerce as it exists today. What happens when we just set it and forget it and let AI do it? It's going to create pain for you on the back end when you're returning 80% of the things that these agents end up sending to your house. So people aren't going to actually want to do it. There are some negative things that ultimately deter people from these behaviors. So question the premise. Don't buy into every hype. It also reminds me of a Jeff Bezos quote, which I'm not going to get it exactly, but he said, like, I like to ask what things are going to be true 10 years from now. Like some things never change about humans. They're always going to want, something faster. They always want a cheaper price. Like you are much better off sticking to those things. One thing I'm sure of about humans is that they're always going to like quality content, something that's truly interesting and creative. They are walking around in a sea of commodity content everywhere, and it's mind numbing for them. So they really get excited when something breaks through and in a significant way. That's not going to change.
Yeah. And I mean, just touching on the AI bots, it's one of my biggest, like, mind-blowingly pet peeves to think that brands are so quick and retailers are so quick to jump on like creating shopping bots, because we as consumers have shopping bots now shopping from shopping bots who are selling us. And so we have no loyalty then to the retailer, to the brand. We have no connection to them. So everything's just going to be, your Amazon basics, because they're just going to find the lowest price, fastest delivery, and the quality is just going to go right down, and brands are going to disappear. And people, I was actually having dinner with the CEO of one of the largest advertising holding companies in the world. I was like, there's not going to be brands anymore if it just keeps going this way. And he was like, what are you talking about? Like, there's going to be zero reason for brands to exist if these AI bots are just buying from AI bots. And then to your point, the economics won't even make sense. They think it's going to help the economics. It's going to do the opposite.
It's not going to go that way. I mean, that's the thing. You cannot, I don't know why we try so hard in technology to disintermediate humans from the process. Like once you abstract away humans, like what's the point of all this? It reminds me of the Matrix when, we're just like hooked up to machines. I don't know. We're headed down a wrong path, but I'm just like, this is a good time for a reality check and ask yourself, do we think that humans aren't going to want to make these decisions and have free will in the future? I think they're still going to want that.
Yeah. Well said. So as we look ahead, the convergence of content, commerce, and media, it's only going to become more important. And according to data from Placer AI, ComScore, and Nielsen, leading U.S. retail media properties now rival or even surpass traditional digital media in unique audience reach, which is pretty wild. And this shift, which is a major shift, it's not a trend, it's not a fad, like this is a full-on shift that signals a major transformation in how brands and retailers will connect with consumers across multiple channels. So what should challenger RMNs be doing right now to future-proof their flywheel and capitalize on this expanding reach? What innovations in content and media do you expect to define this next wave of challenger RMNs?
Yeah, so just to add a little bit of color to this, if you look at Amazon or Walmart or Target, they are reaching well over 100 million people, audiences every month, which compares favorably with the top digital platforms, compares favorably with the top TV broadcast networks, right? So these are scaled media networks in their own right. What do challenger RMNs do is be thinking about how they can continue to increase their scale. Many of those second tier ones are 30 million, 50 million. They should be thinking about how they push themselves up closer to 100 million. And there are a few different ways that they can do that. The first is they got to turn the lights on for the advertising business in store. I mean, that's where their biggest audiences are in most cases. Their in-store audiences are usually a factor or two larger than their digital audiences. The digital audiences, how do you keep growing those? We've seen a trend where several major retailers, Best Buy included, are now building marketplaces. Marketplaces significantly increase your inventory. That generates a lot more traffic, especially search traffic and things of that nature. So they should just be thinking about, one, what is my audience? Let me start thinking about all of these shoppers as an audience, understand who they are, how they're reached, and all the different ways in which I can maximize them. And then also articulate the value of that audience to advertisers.
Yeah. And when you think about future proofing their flywheel as retail media landscape continues to evolve, I love what you just previously said that will this matter? And what will be the truth in 10 years? Is there anything else for RMNs to think about? Is it possible to future proof when technology is moving as quickly as it is?
Yeah, I mean, I'd advise any of them just to stick to the fundamentals. Go back to the why of retail media, high quality media adjacent to commerce. If you consistently, as an RMN, build the experiences and invest your resources in the experiences that improve the quality of the media and make it more relevant or adjacent to commerce, you're going to drive value for brands. You're going to drive value for your merchants. It's a sweet spot. Don't chase AI for AI's sake or other technologies, like only if it's in service of doing those things. I think that's how you future proof your flywheel at the end of the day.
Yeah. So what's one bold prediction for the next 2 to 3 years in challenger retail media, and especially around content and omnichannel strategy?
I think that we are going to see a couple things emerge. One is a lot more partnerships with digital publishers and maybe the first acquisition. And that's something I think is going to send some ripples throughout the industry, because all of a sudden it's going to set off these discussions within RMNs. Should we go and buy this digital publisher? And then in the physical store, I just think we're going to see a dramatic change as content starts to enter into the store. It opens up so many new opportunities. I mentioned creators, like we'll see creator content infused through the store experience. We'll see media brands start to integrate into the store experience, right? Media brands, their primary publications might be in decline, but those brands still matter and they have authority. So if they have authority in what people buy into and believe, I think it should be something that starts to enter into the physical store experience as well. So
Yeah.
those are my two bold predictions.
Yes. So let's move into a rapid fire round: myths, mistakes, and must do. But to our listeners, do not worry. We are still going to put Andrew in the expert corner shortly. But first, rapid fire round. There's a lot of buzz about video content, retail media strategy, as we've been discussing. So I'm going to hit you with a few rapid fire questions to get your take on what is real, what is hype, and what is essential for challenger RMNs. So what's the biggest myth about video content in retail media?
That it's too expensive. I hear from brands all the time. They don't want to buy the on-site ad units or especially streaming TV because the CPMs are too high and it hurts their ROAS. And I will say, as I often say, the ROAS is a metric you should not be looking at. Look at incrementality. These are the things that actually move the needle on growing brand sales.
What is the most common mistake challenger RMNs make with content?
That they're not even thinking about it yet, that they're not that far in their journey as media companies, that they've really put content to the center of the equation. And so, yeah, I think there's so much value there and it should be a priority. And right now, I think in most cases, it's on the back burner.
Yeah. And then, as we discussed earlier, when they say, okay, we're ready for content. Well, okay, what type of content would you like? So what is one must do for RMNs looking to build a winning future ready flywheel?
I think they need to prioritize and optimize on-site content for rich media today. I mentioned the value of sponsored brand or sponsored brand video type of ad units, the above the fold stuff. It's especially important. I think it's important in all categories, but especially in more lifestyle driven categories. There's still a lot of RMNs that don't even have that inventory on their sites. To me, that's overlooking the obvious, and there's a lot of value inherent. And it's frankly what their biggest brands are going to want anyway. So I think they need to put the pedal to the metal on that one.
What's a overhyped trend in retail media right now?
Data monetization. I hear this all the time. First off, everyone seems to have a different definition of it, but I think it's basically the idea that they're going to take their valuable first party data and turn it into some sort of product that they can sell. If you're Walmart, you can do that. If you're Kroger, you can do that. And they are. And maybe a few category leaders will be able to do it, but it's a single digit number of RMNs that will be able to do that in any meaningful way. And the problem that most retailers have is they overrate the value of their own first party data. It's not that it's not good first party data. It's that the real value of it to brands has to be compared against the next best alternative. So if you are a large regional grocer, you've got great data on what people are buying in store, but is that data more valuable than what Walmart and Kroger have on grocery buying? No, because that's who you're competing against. So the reality is you can spin your wheels on data monetization and not really get that far in terms of driving a new revenue stream.
So, what's an underappreciated opportunity that you wish more brands or retailers would seize?
I've mentioned this a few times already, but in-store retail media, it has been so hard to get retailers off the starting block. Now they're finally doing that, but it's still slow moving. There's a lot of bureaucracy. First you got to roll out the screens, then you got to actually start delivering the content. It's still going to be a few years till we really see this channel take off in a major way. But once they get there, I think it's going to be a mega opportunity. And I would say for a lot of RMNs, it's existential, especially ones who are not the category leaders or among those, let's say 20 or so RMNs that really can have that walled garden status. You're going to need in-store retail media or you don't have a retail media network.
Right. Not to harp on it, but one of our clients has been rolling out these screens. And then when we keep asking about the content that they're putting on, they don't know. They haven't thought about it. They just want the screens in store, which to your point, obviously that's the first step, but they're going live and without strategy behind the content. It's pretty wild. So if you could give one piece of advice to a CMO navigating retail media in 2025 and beyond, what would that be?
Pay attention to retail media. I've been surprised that I've been doing a lot of work with brands and kind of working my way up the chain to understand the decision-making of these brand organizations. And what I'm finding out is a lot of CMOs, they own retail media and they know that it's an important piece of the equation, but they've been happy to think of it as an e-commerce thing and they just put it off into the corner because they'd rather do the creative stuff, right? These are brand marketers and people from creative agencies who tend to hold these roles. So they're not really paying enough attention and they're not investing in it. I think that's one of the reasons why in-store retail media hasn't taken off because CMOs aren't demanding it. If I were a CMO, I'd be thinking of this as an unbelievable creative opportunity, right? I mean, it's a chance for some new high quality, culturally relevant creative in a very unique context. Like you can do some really cool stuff in a store with this dynamic digital media and they're not doing it. Like I'd be sinking my teeth into this. So I'm going to keep beating the drum on this to see if I can get more CMOs' attention on it.
Well, please do, because that's what needs to happen. All right. Welcome to the Experts Corner. This is our last segment, not dissimilar to what we just did, but what is a strategy everyone following, but nobody is questioning?
Everybody's chasing ROAS. It's the common metric and everybody's making investment decisions based on it. And it goes hand in hand with cost efficiency. Like this is what people get their bonuses from. And it's the exact strategy that is leading them to not grow because ROAS does not correlate with incremental ROAS or incremental sales. And it's easily gamed. It's easily gamed by buying cheap ads.
Right.
You buy cheap ads that don't work. They look good on ROAS, even though they're not actually driving performance. So, it's this very open secret. And yet for whatever reason, the industry can't break its addiction to this. But I'm also not surprised because the industry is still using click-through rates on display ads, which, I was part of research 15 years ago now that showed that they had no correlation to conversions. And here we are.
What's a trend that you think will be on the decline or even dead within the next year?
There's so many that I think should be on the decline or dead, but I know that they won't be. Is the metaverse dead yet? Let me take the next step of the metaverse because we talked about it. The glasses. Okay.
Yeah.
The AR glasses, I don't think anybody's asking for this. It's just starting to get hyped. And I'm hoping that this hype cycle happens very quickly and people realize like, no, this is just another piece of technology that's trying to disintermediate my existence. We don't want it. I don't need to walk down the street and look in a tree and have these glasses identify what bird is in the tree. That's not a use case. I'm sorry. I don't care about that.
Well said. What's the one thing that you think everybody in your industry is afraid to admit?
So I've seen this come up a lot over the years and it still surprises me, but it's consistently true. People in retail are so scared of media. They're scared to have conversations about media. They just don't want to go there. And at the same time, people in media are terrified of retail. And the reason I don't get it is because since the beginning of time, these two things have gone together. Like advertising and media has been about driving commerce. Like they go hand in hand. These organizations have to deal with both of these things all the time. And yet the people who do one thing don't want to get into the other. So I don't know why that is, but I think people are afraid to admit it and they just kind of try to steer around the other side of retail media.
What's the most controversial opinion that you hold?
How long do we have?
I know, I was about to say.
Yes, I like controversial opinions. Right now, I've been spending a lot of time covering AI. I think there's so much optimism around it. And I've been writing a lot about why AI might be a net negative for most companies. I've acknowledged there are some things that I think it can drive some efficiencies, but if you chase it in the wrong way, like it's also going to create a lot of exhaust. It's going to create costs. It's going to create a lot of mess ups, spills that you have to go and clean up as a company. We have this idea in our head that like, we're just going to, outsource it to AI and it's going to do everything perfectly and tie it in a bow and everything's going to be great. And all I can think about are the things that will go wrong. Like the example before, what happens when we let it do our shopping for us? We're going to end up having a lot of returns. So I know people don't want to think about it because it's fun to be excited about a new technology. But if you ask me to bet on it, I would say it's much more likely to cause problems for your average company than it is to create efficiencies.
I love it. So if you did have to bet your career on one prediction, what would that be?
This one's an easy one for me. It's the future of retail media is the future of all media. I've given presentations under this title. I love it because it sounds so hyperbolic, like it's just fueling the hype around retail media. But it's actually a very mundane argument to me. When you think about retail media and you think about what all media and advertising is today, you can just go one by one down all the major buckets of advertising and realize that if retail media isn't already kind of taking it over, it's clearly where it's going. So for example, a quarter of search ad dollars are already in retail media. It's the future of search in a lot of ways. Talk about AI, but retail media is already there. Display advertising. There's a reason that retail data is so valuable. It's better data than what you get in your average cookie. So it's going to be the future of, all of this upper funnel advertising from a targeting standpoint. The future of TV is performance TV, where you have targeting and attribution. So I don't think any of these are controversial arguments when you break it down.
Well, Andrew, it is no wonder that you are one of the absolute, if not the top voice and thought leader in all of retail and retail media, and soon to be just called media. So thank you for sharing your expertise on how content, video, omnichannel experiences are reshaping the entire retail media landscape. And for all the challenger RMNs out there, I hope you're leaving with new ideas on how to build your flywheel, why video content must be at the center of your strategy. And for our listeners, be sure to subscribe to Andrew's Substack, Media Ads and Commerce, mediaadsandcommerce.substack.com, or click the link in the show notes, and follow Andrew on LinkedIn for the latest on commerce, media, advertising, and more. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Andrew. And if you found value in this episode, please share it with your colleagues or friends and subscribe to Tap Into an Expert wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Eric.